It's July 1st, and this is the evening edition of MicAndBike. This is definitely the hottest day of the year so far. I'm sweating already, and I've barely gotten started on the bike ride. Definitely in the 90s somewhat. So I'm listening to an episode of This American Life that is, I see convertibles. It's kind of funny how all of a sudden convertibles emerge when there's sunshine. I wonder where they are the other times of the year, which is most of the year in the Pacific Northwest here. So back to This American Life that I'm listening to. This episode is dealing with testosterone, and they interviewed a man who had a medical condition where his body stopped producing testosterone, and until they discovered it and gave him replacement hormones, he was describing how his whole personality changed, which was pretty interesting. And then they also interviewed a man who used to be a woman who started taking testosterone as part of a sex change. And he was describing how his mind really changed. Not only did he start having, a lot of pornographic thoughts, but things like math even started making sense, and physics. He said specifically physics started making sense, and he really started liking science. And he'd never done that before when he was a woman. So it's pretty interesting. It basically points to the fact that a lot of our personalities and who we are is dependent on chemistry and physical factors and the physiology of our brains. We like to think that we're all just free agents exercising our will for whatever we want to do, and we have control over everything. But, the more we discover with science, the more we understand that we're really creatures of chemistry and, how our bodies are built. I mean, the fact that your aptitude to math can be dependent or can be highly influenced based on the amount of testosterone you have in your body definitely shows that there's some, real physiological bases in some of in our abilities, in our mental abilities, mental faculties. Who knows what other things there are? I mean, testosterone is just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, there's the hormones, chemicals that can influence our brain, but there's also just, the physical structure itself that can have impacts. And I've also read studies about things where scientists would insert electrodes into the brain and do some minor electrical stimulation to induce feelings of love. And they could, this one article I read pointed out that they could successfully induce a feeling of love for anybody they wanted in their subjects. So they could make you fall in love with someone. I mean, it kind of sounds kind of scary. But again, it shows how much we are creatures of our physiologies. And, how much control do we actually have over what we do? It's a fascinating question. And how much control do we have over who we are? I've always found studies of identical twins to be interesting too, where particularly the ones where they look at twins who were separated at birth, put in different homes or something, adopted by different families. And what's striking is how similar these twins are, even though they never grew up together from the day they were born, pretty much. I mean, that seems to put a stake in the idea of nurture as being the sole factor in defining our personalities. If people have the same kind of hobbies and interests and so on, being raised in different families, then it makes you really wonder how much of our personalities are just a factor of, or a function of our genetics. I'm sure that nurture can have a big impact on the extremes. But if you have relatively similar nurturing, right, that the kids all go to relatively nice homes with nice, loving parents, they'll kind of turn out the same no matter which parents they've got. Now, if you had some parents who were abusive or something, and torture their kids or have great neglect, that could perhaps have a real impact there. It's just like you can take almost any puppy and turn it into a vicious attack dog if you raise it in the right fashion. That doesn't mean that every dog is predisposed genetically to be a vicious attack animal. So I'm sure that with the right conditioning, a lot of humans, a lot of people could be conditioned to have certain types of personality traits. But I think that's more on the extremes. It's interesting that they were on the This American Life show. All the staff of the show participated in getting their testosterone levels tested, and and their gay colleague who had little interest in sports was the one who had the highest levels of testosterone. I don't know if that means anything in particular, but it's interesting. You know, it would be interesting if they did those separated birth twin studies for twins who were raised in completely different cultures on different continents with different languages. Most of the studies, when they compare the twins, they're both in the same country. And so the families they're being raised in and the culture they're being raised in are fairly similar. There's a lot of similarities. I mean, there are lots of things you can be acculturated to, for sure. Like ideas about what tastes good or what is beautiful or sexy, those things. There's a large degree of acculturation and nurturing that goes into those. I mean, you go from one country to the next and you find differences in the types of food they like. You know, it's like different countries will have real radically different ideas on the best pizza toppings. There are many foods popular in Asia that just don't go over well in America. Motorcycle cop is up here. Another concert, obviously. A lot of cars going to a concert. Steely Dan. Oh, that's what's going on tonight. Here we go. Hello. So back to the topic of acculturation. I can even relate on a small scale that I've noticed my own tastes and preferences can change based on the society I live in. When I first went to Europe, when I was 17, I found that a lot of the women in Germany that I'd see in the subways and stuff, they didn't seem particularly attractive to me. Not all of them, some were attractive, but many weren't. They had different ideas of hygiene and so on. A lot of women wouldn't shave their legs or arms and so on. And I thought it was kind of weird. And there was also a different physique type that I was used to. But after a while, I started to think the women were looking good. So the women hadn't changed, it was I who had. So I think you kind of can modify your own perception sometimes. Yep. Changing subjects a little bit. We watched a World Cup game today of the US versus Belgium, and the US lost in extra time. I had to go on a conference call, so I missed the overtime when the actual action took place. For the full first hour of the game, for the first 90 minutes, in the official time, they ended it with a tie, and that's what put them into overtime. But I had to go on a conference call with a partner, and I could hear my colleagues shouting in the other office a little later on, so I knew something was up. Not that I follow sports all that much. I likely wouldn't have watched it if my colleagues hadn't wanted to. So the US is out of the World Cup now. I guess the US can say that they almost won, and they proved that they can tough it out with the best of them. But in the end, they lost. It's kind of interesting though to see the US. There goes a real cyclist, leaving me in the dust. So it's kind of interesting to see the US be defeated by these smaller countries. Just shows that size isn't everything. It's all too easy for people to think that they can't compete with some other company or some other person because the other person or entity has too many advantages. But sometimes you can. Just don't mess with Canada in hockey. No, Canada's being defeated in hockey too. It has happened. It's nice to be riding in the shade a bit here. Yeah, this is going to be one of the evenings where it's harder to get to sleep at home. We don't have any air conditioning in the house, so when there's hot days, it's always a little uncomfortable trying to get to sleep. Hi. Oh, looks like there's some cars showing up at the Buddhist temple. They might be having an activity tonight. Sometimes I'm quite surprised with the number of out-of-state license plates on the vehicles parked for Buddhist temple events. I've seen them from all over the place. No out-of-state ones tonight. Well, these guys in an electric car couldn't have come from really far away. Or it's unlikely. My neighbor's driving by in their convertible. Yeah, getting to the end of my ride here. Getting to the end of the hill. We're starting to see more flags coming out. 4th of July is just around the corner. Actually, today is Canada Day. Now that I think about it, it's July 1st. It's Canada's National Day. You know, I'm not sure what the day, what is behind the Canada Day. Was it the day they signed Confederation? I don't know. It would be interesting if July 1st was the day they defeated the invading American armies in some big battle in the War of 1812, but I doubt that would be the case. But it would be fun. The UPS guy. Well, we've made it home again. And that ends another episode of Mike and Bike. See you all tomorrow.